Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today for this week's Security News Update. A little bit abbreviated today, but in the CMMC section, uh, people are asking whether or not they need to be in compliance with contracts that they signed last year or potentially years ago that have the 7012 defaults clause in it, or do they just need to be compliant after the CMMC regulation comes out with new contracts? And the answer is no, you have to be compliant with the contracts you already signed. And in fact, all of the enforcement actions that the Department of Justice has done, and it seems like about one a month, all apply to existing contracts. None of them apply to CMMC because CMMC basically doesn't have the force of law yet. So yeah, you do have to comply with that. Microsoft released a capability called Quick Machine Recovery, which is something that they added after the CrowdStrike meltdown. The plan is that eventually all Windows Home machines will have that turned on, and in businesses you'll be able to turn it on if you want to. It's a cool feature. What it allows you to do is remotely configure a machine after it blue screens, after it dies, like it did in CrowdStrike. It boots up into this safe diagnostic mode, and it'll talk to Microsoft's servers, and they'll be able to download a patch to de-blue screen it. So that's a pretty cool feature, and that is available now. And you can start playing with it, but they're going to continue to enhance it. Under the legislation section, state lawmakers, literally 260 of them, sent a letter to Congress saying, don't mess with our AI. Let us go off and regulate AI if we want to, or not regulate AI. In this bill, whatever you want to call it, the Senate is pondering, which is kind of mostly tax and spending and stuff like that, raising the debt ceiling. Because of the fact that this is an 1,100-page bill, and nobody read it, they just voted for it, which I think is kind of an interesting view of Congress. And some Congress people are actually admitting they didn't read the thing, even though they voted for or against it, which is kind of ugly. But these 260 state lawmakers sent a letter to Congress saying, keep your hands off AI, let us regulate it if we want to. And we'll see. I mean, the bill, the way that these 1,000+ page bills get passed is they put all kinds of provisions in them that have nothing to do with the core purpose, or for that matter, the stated purpose of the bill. And that's oftentimes why they're so expensive. This is the kind of the pork and I forget what Eli called it, abomination. But that's why they are that. And if the bill passes as is, no telling whether it will, whether it won't, whether they'll get passed in any form. It would make dozens of state laws unenforceable and force the states effectively to repeal those laws. Under education is kind of, honestly, I never heard of this before. I read about this today. It's called, this past week, it's called Data Security Posture Management, or DSPM. It's actually a technology that identifies sensitive data across multiple cloud environments, which a lot of companies have, and allows automated assessment of security vulnerabilities and regulatory noncompliance. This particular article was an article from IBM, obviously touting the products that they sell, but there's other people that make DSPM products. And it gives you automation insight to help security and compliance issues cross-platform. It's kind of cool. In the breaches department, Main Street Bank reports that, gee, who would have thought of this? They had a vendor that leaked customer information. The vendor notified them in March. This is June. And after the horse is out of the barn, the bank says they stopped using the vendor. Well, that's a fix. Huh. And came 5 days after major banking associations asked the SEC to rescind a rule that requires banks that tell customers when they've been breached. Nice. I'm not sure exactly how that works. The SEC rule is pretty convoluted, like a lot of government rules. So, I have sympathy for the banks. because it was written by lawyers, it has a lot of weasel words in it that allow banks to try to interpret the regulations. Say, nah, we don't need to report this particular breach because of this particular word in the, if it just said, if you can breach, you got to report it. That'd be pretty simple, and I think the banks would have less to complain about. So we'll see where that goes. Hackers have leaked 86 million AT&T customer records and decrypted Social Security numbers. That's kind of interesting. They must have stolen the encryption key as well. The database was stolen last year, but hasn't been publicly leaked until now. It was posted on a Russian cybercrime forum once in May and once in June. The data includes full names, dates of birth, phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses, and for about half of those folks, or more than half of those folks, it includes their Social Security numbers. So this is kind of a word to the wise. Not so much because you're going to India and going to go buy groceries online, but Indian grocery delivery startup Kirana Pro was hacked, and their virtual servers were deleted. And apparently, in addition to that, their source code, which was stored in GitHub, was also deleted. Obviously, they did not have sufficient backups, and whether they will continue to exist as an entity is highly unclear. So the word to the wise there is make sure you have good air-gapped backups, really good ones. The DHS budget proposal guts CISA and their programs, and this is not a big surprise. They've said they were going to do this all along, even though the president released an AI, which I'll talk about next week, an AI executive order that tasks CISA to do even more stuff than they're already tasked to do. So I'm not sure exactly how that works, but the proposal is to eliminate more than a third of the staff, and more than 1,000 staffers have already left, so they're pretty close to that 1/3 number, and reduces spending by about 20%. So it's not clear how CISA does all the things that they're legally mandated to do, but of course they claim it won't affect their capabilities because, after all, a third of the staff is just sitting there reading the newspaper or something. I don't know. Meta and Yandex. Meta is Facebook and its stuff, and Yandex is the Russian version of Google. They broke Android's privacy framework. It's interesting. So they were doing something. Google implemented a capability to stop that. They figured out a way around it, clearly violating the terms of service. When Meta was outed about it, we don't know about Yandex, but when Meta was outed about it, they basically said, "Oops." I don't know whether that "oops" was "oops, we got caught," or "oops, we didn't know we were doing what we were doing," even though there's no way you could possibly do that unintentionally. We'll leave that to you to figure out which one of those two versions is correct, but at least at this point, they've stopped that particular activity. CISA put out an interesting question, I think, for all business executives, and this is one I've proposed for a long time. It says, does this particular capability need to be exposed on the public internet? You can have data spinning around on a disk somewhere, it's virtual disk or a real disk or whatever, but does it need to be exposed to the internet? Anything that's exposed to the internet is easier to hack than anything that's not exposed to the internet, because if the people have to get inside your network in order to hack you, well, that's a bigger problem. If they succeed, you got bigger problems. So, an interesting question, and we'd love to assist you in answering that and figuring out, well, what data does need to be exposed, what data does not need to be exposed, and what data can just be deleted. And in the news bites, emails with that try to trick people with fake information about their Social Security information are making the rounds again. This particular one, if you fall for it, installs remote access software, so now the hackers control your computer, your phone, whichever one you opened it on, and they have access to all your data. So think twice about that. The U.S. Commerce Secretary defends the export controls crackdown. Um, I'm having a bit of mixed feelings about that because, yes, selling forbidden technology to our enemies is not a good plan. On the other hand, if we don't sell them that, then other guys are going to sell it to them. And are we really achieving the purpose, or are we just handing off whole swaths of market to other countries? Hackers are continuing to use voice phishing. This time it's a campaign against Salesforce customers, not Salesforce itself. So they're pretending to do what they pretend to do, and they're going after individual companies that use Salesforce. And apparently it's been pretty successful. There's an Apple WebKit 0-day that was patched this month that has been around. The bug has been around, and the organization that's using it. Well, the organization that's been using it has been around since like 2018. The bug has been around since like 2020. It's been around for a while. There is a patch for it now, though. And lastly, the president has directed the government agencies to go compile a single database of all the information they have on you, rather than, the information being distributed amongst multiple different departments and multiple different databases with multiple different security protocols. He wants to put it all into, using his words, one big beautiful database. And you do anything that they don't like, and that's going to amplify the data that's in there on you. So, think of it as a digital enemies list. Needless to say, there's a bunch of people who are not too happy with that concept. That's all for this week. As I said, if the hackers deleted all of your online resources, like happened to Corona Pro, would you still be in business? And do you need some help? There are a number of different solutions to it, so this is far from an impossible thing to solve, but you do need to work at it. So with that, until next time, stay safe and keep the hackers out.